Now we're going to take a look at some MT sensors live in the Meraki dashboard. So once you've claimed and added your sensors to a dashboard network, you get a new environmental tab here on the left-hand navigation menu. When you hover over that and then click Overview, you're taken to the sensor overview page. And on this page, you've got three tabs. You've got Overview, Sensors, and Alert Profiles. And that's all there is. And that's because the dashboard interface for MT is Meraki simple, just like you'd expect. We're going to come back to these in more detail in just a minute. The first thing that catches your eye on this page, though, is this device status section. So you can see at a glance how many of your sensors are offline or warning for some sort of sensor issue, whether that be a connectivity issue or maybe you have an issue with one of your probes. And then as you scroll down, you have an alerting sensors section where you can see which of your sensors are alerting of an issue and what that issue is. It's such a simple feature of the dashboard, but it's so incredibly powerful because, again, you can take one glance and know exactly how many of your sensors need your attention. In our case, we actually have one alerting temperature sensor here, which is concerning. So we're going to come back and take a look at that in just a minute. And then at the very bottom of the page, you can see which alert profiles you have configured and how many sensors you have those applied to. We're going to come back to those last. So when you scroll back up and click on the Sensors tab, you get a very familiar table showing you all of the sensors that you have in this network. Now this is what we call a flex table, and we call it that because you can customize it to fit your needs. So for example, maybe I want to see the gateway signal strength, RSSI. I can turn that on and then I can rearrange these columns to suit my needs. My favorite feature of this table, though, is the fact that you can see the actual readings of your sensors in the list view itself. So that makes it really easy to compare your network closets to each other. In this case, I can see that my IDF is running considerably hotter than my MDF. And then if you want to change the time scope, you can do that at the top. Right now our data is showing the last day, but we can change this to the last 2 hours, and you're essentially zooming in on that data, as you can see here. Now this red dotted line that you see in these readings, this is the alert threshold that we have configured. And the way that works is if any of your readings ever exceed that threshold, they turn red right here in this view so that you can see them more easily. You're also going to get an alert, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. This table is also very easily searchable. So for example, if I want to see all of my IDF sensors, I can type that in. And now I'm looking at the three sensors that I have in my IDF closet. There's also plenty of other criteria that you can filter by here as well. So like I said, I'm actually a little concerned about this sensor that's reporting 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to click on this one. And when you do that, you're redirected to the sensor status page. And we're seeing information specific to this sensor. On the left-hand side, you have some familiar information like model number, MAC address, serial number. This sensor in particular is running on battery power, so you can see that it has 99% remaining there. And then the data you really need to see is front and center. This is an MT10, so I've got temperature and humidity readings. This sensor in particular is actually monitoring the entire room, not a particular device or rack. So 86 degrees is actually concerning. All it takes is one intern leaving your door open, and next thing you know, you've got a situation. Again, you can change the time scope here at the top. Right now it's set to the last 2 hours. I could set this to the last day or the last week, whatever I want to do. And you can see this has been running hot for quite a while. As you hover over it, you get more specific information and timestamps. And you can see that our threshold is set at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, when that's exceeded, as soon as it was exceeded, we got that alert that notified us of that issue. Then if you scroll down to the bottom, you have gateway connectivity stats. These come in handy if you need to do any kind of troubleshooting. And then the MT12 and MT20 status pages are also very similar. So I'll go back to my sensors page and just show you that real quick here. Let's take a look at this MT12 that's been detecting water. So the page is very similar. The only difference is the main data that it's reporting is different. So we have a different view of that. So we can see here when water was detected and then when that cable was dry. Now these thresholds that we keep talking about, that we are seeing here in this view, these are configured in alert profiles. So let's talk about alert profiles. We put a lot of thought and care into these because The reason people are purchasing these is because they don't want to have to be monitoring for environmental conditions. You shouldn't have to be staring at the dashboard to catch a problem when it happens. That's what alerting is for. So the first step to get started with alerting is to create an alert profile. So I'll go here to my alert profiles tab. And here you can see all of your existing alert profiles, or you could create a new one. We already have some created, so let's just take a look at how we have them set up. So I'll click edit on this room environment alert profile. You can see that this one is set up to alert us any time of day. And then we have our conditions under which we'll be notified. So we have this one set up to let us know if the temperature exceeds 80 degrees Fahrenheit or drops below 64 degrees Fahrenheit for any amount of time. And then same thing for humidity. We have an upper and a lower threshold. Both are optional. In this case, I think for any amount of time makes sense, but if you wanted to, you could change that to only alert you if that threshold's been exceeded for a specific amount of time. And then at the bottom of the page is where you configure your recipients. So in our case, we have a mailer added here, and my whole team is on that mailer, so we all get the notification. You could add individual email addresses. You could put in individual phone numbers as well. No additional configuration required. You could get alerts via webhook, and if you have the Meraki mobile app, you can enable push notifications there as well. But maybe there's times of day where I don't want to receive alerts. I think in this case, for temperature and humidity, it makes sense that you'd want an alert any time of day. But what about the door opening? You might not want to know, during work hours if your employees are going in and out of a network closet door. So let's go back and take a look at that profile. We have a door open alert profile already created here, so I'll click edit. And there, right away, you can see we have a schedule applied. And we named it non-working hours. If I edit it, you'll see that it's set up to only give us alerts during non-working hours. So no alerts from 9 to 6 on the weekdays, alerts outside of those times, and then alerts anytime on the weekends. And the other thing you might want to tweak too is, like we said before, you could change that alert threshold to only notify you if it's been exceeded for a certain amount of time. So in this case, I could say, only let me know if the door has been left open for more than 5 minutes. I would go ahead and save that. And then the last step is to apply the profiles to a sensor. If the profiles aren't assigned to a sensor, you're not going to get any alerts. So that's the second step. I'll go back to my sensors page. And you could apply these on an individual basis on the status page. You're probably going to want to do this in bulk. So check the boxes next to the sensors you want to apply the alert profile to. And then click More Actions, Manage Alert Profiles, choose the alert profile you want to apply, click Save, and that's all there is to it. It's Meraki simple. Andy is a Meraki customer who works for a manufacturing company. This company in particular manufactures textiles, and they have a very diverse product line. They manufacture everything from office chair cushions and fire-resistant clothing to airbags for your car. Now, their manufacturing line 100% relies on the internet. That means if the internet goes down, so does their production. Now, what's ironic about Andy's production line is that the very textiles they produce often generate so much dust and lint that it gets clogged up in the critical network infrastructure supporting their production line. You can see here what it looks like when you open up one of these wall racks after just a week of production. So Andy is very concerned about heat buildup causing network degradation. That makes Andy a great customer for MT. He can set his temperature threshold and be notified immediately if an enclosure is in danger of overheating. So after just a few weeks of having MT deployed, Andy let us know that it already found a problem for him. His MT10 told him that the temperature in one of his data center racks was in excess of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But strangely enough, the competitor solution that he had in that same rack said everything was normal. So he went down to look at it, and he found that the rack door was wide open. And of course, the rack was indeed in excess of 100 degrees. The competitor solution took its temperature measurements with intake and exhaust sensors on the rack AC unit itself. But MT is highly flexible because it's battery powered and it's wireless, meaning there's no cables to route. So Andy was able to put the MT right where it needed to be inside the rack, which ultimately saved the day before any damage occurred to his gear. Helen works for a higher education full stack Meraki customer, and she's already using Meraki for their critical network infrastructure. They have decent visibility into the digital world. They have good visibility into college-wide email because they host their own server. Same with faculty payroll and student financial information as well because they do provide financial aid. What they don't have good visibility into are things like the temperature of their network closets that are housing their critical network infrastructure, whether or not water leaks may be affecting any of these spaces, and whether anyone has been intruding into these spaces. The reason they care about these things is, firstly, it's required by their insurance. Because they operate with public funds, their insurance company considers them in the same way as they consider a financial institution, and therefore they require that they monitor these things for their insurance policy. They've also lost equipment in the past due to overheating. They certainly don't want that to happen again. And the most interesting reason for needing this visibility is that they rely on building management to keep their network closets cool. And they've had disagreements with them in the past where they've shut down the HVAC systems overnight or on weekends to save money, of course at the expense of the network equipment overheating. So MT is able to provide them with the data that they need to justify keeping the system on to that building management team. In addition to that, the HVAC systems that they did have were old and insufficient to cool some of those closets. And Helen was having serious difficulty convincing the building management team that they needed an upgrade. So what did Helen do? She added the email addresses of all the members of the IT team, facilities team, and the finance team to their alert profile for all of their MT10 temperature sensors, and within 2 weeks they had a signed purchase order for a new AC system because MT made the problem impossible to ignore. That is a perfect example of the type of business impact that these sensors can provide.